Welcome to Oklahoma State Environmental Health and Safety. Today we're going to cover hand and power tool training. During this time we'll be talking about the hazards of hand and even power tools, basic safety rules for use. We're going to cover electric tools, striking tools, guarding, pneumatic tools, grinders, and cordless power tools. Some of the hazards workers using hand and power tools may be exposed to following things: objects that fall, fly, or even abrasive, even splashes, harmful dust, fumes, mist, vapors, and gases. You can kind of expect that. The frayed or even damaged electrical cords, hazardous connections, and even improper grounding can all be associated with hazards of power tools. Some of the basic safety rules to kind of follow: maintain tools regularly, use the right tool for the job. You need to inspect the tool before each use. Operate according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Use the right personal protective equipment, or the PPE, and also make sure you use the appropriate guards for that particular piece of equipment. Hand tool hazards include, we're going to give you some examples. Do not use wrenches with jaws that are sprung. That right there is one that a lot of times will cause an individual to pinch their hands or their fingers. Impact tools, an example of that would be chisels and wedges, tools with loose or cracked or splintered handles, nails with heads that basically have mushrooms. Those are some things to kind of look for there. Screwdriver is using as a chisel. You don't want to do that. And the other thing too is do not use tools with taped handles. They may actually be hiding cracks. In the illustration that you have right there on your screen, you can see an example of a cracked handle. Once again, if that was happening to be covered over some type of tape, you would not be able to see it, so that's what you want to avoid. Hazards usually caused by misuse or even improper maintenance. Removing tools with defects from service and tag them to prevent others from harm. On to the next part here. As far as your protection factor is concerned, use personal protective equipment such as safety goggles, safety eyewear, hearing protection, gloves. And once again, keep the floor surface free of debris and tripping or slipping hazards. And the other thing too is keep cutting tools sharp. Sharp tools are safer than dull tools. The power tools must be fitted with guards and even safety switches. They are extremely hazardous when used improperly. Power tools are categorized by their power source. They can be either electric, they can be pneumatic, they could be liquid fueled, they could be a hydraulic, they could be powered actuated, or they could be a battery powered type of tool. The switches are very important also. Handheld power tools must be equipped with one of the following type switches. A constant pressure switch. This is the one that actually shuts off the power upon release. You push the button in, your finger comes off of it, and the tool's designed where it shuts off instantaneously. Examples that would be a circular saw, a chainsaw, grinders, handheld power drills for an example. And then of course you got some tools that have an on and off switch. A good example of that would be your routers, your planers, your laminate trimmers, your shears, your jigsaws, the nibblers, the scroll saws are another example that has an on or an off type of a switch. Power tool precautions. Keep people not involved with the work away from the work area. Secure your work with clamps or a vise, freeing your hands to operate the tool. And do not hold the switch button while carrying the plugged-in tool. Keep tools sharp and clean. Consider what you're wearing. Loose clothing, long unbound hair, jewelry can get caught in moving parts. On that particular one right there, if you happen to have long hair, tie it back in a ponytail, put it underneath the collar of your shirt, or put it up underneath the ball cap. And the same thing holds true with jewelry. The necklaces, the neckties are example, or anything that's going to be loose that could potentially get in contact with whatever tool or power tool that you're using at that given time. Remove electrical tools, tag them, do not use. If you have a tool that is damaged, there's no repair that's going to be able to be made to that, cut the electrical cord please off that tool. Disconnect the tool when not in use before servicing and cleaning, and also when changing accessories. Okay, you say, what's changing accessories all about? A good example of that would be if you have electric drill and you're going to put a new bit in that particular drill, you need to unplug it before we actually put the chuck in to remove the drill bit, and then the same way when you put a new drill bit in, you need to tighten the chuck back up, and then you proceed to plug that particular drill in. Electric power tools do not carry portable tools by the cords. Do not use electrical cords to hoist or even lower tools. It's not designed as a rope. The other thing too is don't yank a cord or hose to disconnect it. And the other thing too is keep cords and hoses away from heat, oil, and sharp edges. To protect workers from shock, these tools must have a 3-cord plugged into a grounded receptacle, be double insulated, or be powered by a low voltage isolation transformer. Good example of the double insulation. Once again, you can see the marking right here. If you go back and look at a lot of your power tools that's on the market now, a lot of them will have plastic housings. Plastic's also a good insulator, but also the other thing too you want to keep in mind about plastic also helps on the ergonomic side of it as well, as far as the vibration is concerned. And the other thing too, if you look to the very far right of the screen right there, that's an example of a 3-plug that needs to be plugged into a 3-plug outlet. Okay, no adapters, no breaking off the 3rd prong. That's what you don't want to be doing out there. Electric power tools, good practices include use gloves and safety shoes, store them in a dry place. Do not use in wet locations unless approved for that particular condition. Keep the work area well lit. Ensure cords don't present a tripping hazard, and also operate within the design limits. In other words, use the tool for what it was designed for and do not use it for anything else. Abrasive wheels and tools may throw off-flying fragments. Okay, we're talking about grinders is what we're talking about here, or abrasive wheels. The cover of the spindle end, nut, and flange projections, they shall be installed. They need to be make sure they're properly aligned up with the wheel. The other thing too is they do not need to exceed the length of the fastenings. And the other thing too is the guards so that a minimal amount of the wheel is exposed. The other most important thing is, if you look at the picture there on the screen, is what they call the tongue guard. The tongue guard at the very top is adjustable. It needs to be at least 1/4 inch of a gap, and that's basically from the stone itself to the guard mechanism, as you can see right here where the arrow's being pointed. And then for 1/8 inch for the base gap, some people call this the tool rest area. This portion right here should have about 1/8 of an inch of a gap within that particular location. Now here's what you want to keep in mind. As you start using one of these grinders or these abrasive wheels, they're going to start to become smaller. And when they do, keep in mind you need to go back and readjust the base gap and also the tongue guard for that particular size of abrasive wheel. Inspecting abrasive wheels. Before mounting, inspect closely for damage. Perform the sound or the ring test to ensure it's free from cracks or even defects. How to do the test. Tap gently with a light non-metallic instrument. Example that you see there looks like they're using a piece of wood. If the sound sounds cracked or dead, do not use it because it could fall apart. And that's something that you've got to be very, very careful with there. The other thing too is on abrasive wheel use. To prevent cracking, fit the wheel on the spindle freely and tighten the spindle nut enough to hold the wheel in place without distorting the flange. You only tighten it up to what the manufacturer's recommendations are as far as the torque spec is concerned. Let the tool come up to speed prior to grinding or cutting. Do not stand directly in front of the wheel when it comes up to a full speed, and make sure you're wearing safety eyewear, goggles, a face shield. Those are all designed to be used to protect the eye from what? Flying debris. Let's go to the other part. We've talked about this a little bit earlier, but once again, keep work rests not more than 1/8 of an inch from the wheel surface. This prevents jamming the work between the wheel and the rest, which basically causes the wheel to break. And don't adjust the wheel while it is rotating. Turn the machine off and then make your adjustment. Guarding. Guards expose moving parts of power tools. Good example of those may be guard belts. You've got gears, you've got shafts, you've got pulleys, sprockets and spindles and flywheels and chains, and any other moving part. Never remove a guard when a tool is in use. That guard is designed to do what? Protect you as the operator of that particular tool that you're trying to use at that given time. Another type of guard is what they call the point of operation. And the simplest way to remember this is actually where the work is actually going to be performed on the materials, and it must be guarded. Here's an example of a radial arm saw equipped with proper, once again, point of operation. You can see right here, the guard is in place, so when that blade does come back across this particular material right here, the blade is always kept covered, or it's considered as being guarded. Guard protection. Machine guards must protect the operators and others from point of operation. Here's another one, in-running nip points. Here's what we're talking about with the nip points right here. You've got to be careful, particularly these belt sanders right here, because a lot of times maybe a tail of a shirt or the side of a shirt may get caught in there, and when it does, it just kind of wraps it up and just kind of pulls it completely around. And that's the reason you've got to be very, very careful and make sure that the nip points are being guarded. The rotating parts is another example. If it twists or if it turns, it needs to be guarded. Flying chips and sparks is the other part as far as guard protection is concerned, to keep the debris coming from getting directly on the wearer or the user of that particular tool or the bystanders in that particular location. You got radial arm saw guarding. Here's an example right here to prevent the operator from coming in contact with the rotating blade. This particular saw is equipped with an upper and also with a lower guard. As you can see, it's guarded at the very top up here, and it's also got a guard down here at the very bottom. So when you come in contact with your work, basically what happens is you come in contact with the work, the guard will actually slide open, and when it does, it actually will cut the piece of wood, but it still has a good amount of the blade being guarded for that particular cut. Guarding a portable circular saws is another good example. Guard these saws above and below the base plate or the shoe area. The lower guard must cover the saw the depth of the teeth. So once again, we do give you an example of both the top guard, just like you see on the circular saw here, and you've also got what they call the lower blade guard or the lower guard down here towards the very bottom. In other words, that blade is pretty much completely guarded around to prevent the operator from coming in contact with the sharp blade. Table saw guarding. This is another one. Use a hood for guarding. Utilize push devices. Push sticks is a good example of that. And here's the thing to remember about a table saw is you want to keep your hands as far of a distance as you possibly can in order to operate the table saw in a safe manner. And that's where push sticks do come into play there as well. And the biggest hazard you're going to run across with a table saw is going to be what they call kickback. And when a table saw does kickback, once again, that can cause some potential issues right there, because normally it's going to throw that piece of wood back to the operator of that particular piece of equipment. So just got to keep that in mind with table saw guarding. We've got pneumatic tools. Okay, the pneumatic tools once again are powered by compressed air. Once again, they may be considered as air nailers, air staplers, air chippers, air drills, sanders. Air sanders is an example of that. Here's the thing, the main hazard is getting hit by a tool attachment or by a fastener the employee is using with the tool. Take the safe precautions with an air hose that you take with electrical cords. In other words, don't just yank on the cord, don't step on the cord. So kind of go back and make sure that cord, once that rubber hose has no kinks, tears, or it's actually trying to come apart from its fitting. So go back and look at that. And then, of course, you've got fastenings. Ensure a tool is fastened securely to the air hose to prevent a disconnection. And the other good example we do give you here in the little short sample that we show here on the screen is use a short wire or positive locking device attached to the hose and also to the tool. And basically what this does, it keeps the hose from blowing completely off and injuring an individual. Pneumatic tools, once again, you have to make some type of connections, because a lot of times, once again, if that hose becomes cut, you may have to go back in, cut it, and then go back in, actually put in a new acceptable pneumatic tool type of a connection. And that's what this slide here is all about. The hose clamps is not a means of securing a pneumatic hose, but more acceptable method is use a crimp method, just like you see in the bottom of the screen right here. That's actually a crimp method that's actually being used on this particular hose right here. but also at the very top it does have the quick disconnect there as well. Pneumatics tool safety. Place a safety device on the muzzle to prevent the tool from ejecting fasteners unless the muzzle is in contact with the surface. A good example of that they're showing there is pneumatic nailer. The little yellow part that you see right here, that's actually considered as as the muzzle. It does come in contact with the work, and then once it pushes down, or you push down on the nailer itself, it does engage. Once again, you can actually push the lever on the nailer, and once again, it will shoot a nail directly into the wood surface. The other two is install a safety clip or retainer to prevent attachment. And the other two is such as chisel or even a chipping hammer from being ejected. And once again, you're going to find these on a lot of your pneumatic tools. Wear eye protection, wear hearing protection. They give an example up there of using the jackhammer for an example. But do make sure any type of tool, it doesn't matter what the tool is, make sure you're always wearing some type of eye protection with whatever task that you're trying to complete. Compressed air cleaning. Once again, do not use compressed air for cleaning. Okay, a lot of people like to take the air hose. They've been out working. They come in. They'll take the air hose. They blow off all the dust off their clothing. And essentially, what happens is they just wind up breathing in all that dust that they've essentially have created. There is an exception though, where it's reduced to less than 30 psi with effective chip guard. This is an example of a chip guard right here, as you can see, and once again you could actually use that as a means of blowing the air off of the individual if you needed to, or even yourself. So remember that about compressed air. Okay, this is actually a safety device right here, and it's called a chip guard. Liquid fuel tools are usually gas powered. They could be diesel. The main hazard is the vapors. Okay, the fuel vapors coming off those. Only used in approved flammable liquid containers. Before refilling a fuel-powered tool tank, for an example, shut down the engine and allow it to cool. Use liquid fuel tools in a well-ventilated area. If you happen to be working with liquid fuel tools, remember this is liquid fuel tools, they do produce carbon monoxide. You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. That's why these type of tools need to be used in what type of an environment? Outside in an open area or an area where there's ample amount of ventilation flowing through that particular location. So kind of remember that about liquid fuel tools. And of course you got the powdered actuated tools. You must be trained and licensed to operate one of these powered actuated tools. The other two is test tool each day before loading to ensure the safety devices are working properly. Wear your eye protection, your face protection. Once again, select a power level that will do the work without excessive force. Okay, and these right here are a good example. These are powered actuated tools are actually ones you can actually shoot Pacific nails directly into concrete. Those are used a lot around when they start framing operations. A good example of that would be maybe framing up a house or something of that particular nature as far as their bottom steel plate is concerned. Fatal facts. Here's another example. An employee was killed basically struck in the head by a nail fired from a powered actuated tool. In other words, it went right through the walls. What it come down to, the tool operator was attempting to anchor a plywood form in preparation for pouring a concrete wall. And once again, depending on what the powdered load was that particular individual was using, that particular time it did go directly through the plywood that they was actually using at that given time. Let's go to the other good example right here. The easily penetrated material. Avoid driving into materials easily penetrated unless materials are backed by a substance that will prevent the pin or fastener from passing through. Also, do not drive fasteners in very hard or brittle materials that might chip or splatter or make the fasteners ricochet. Okay. A lot of these look like a little 22 shells, what they look like you're using a 22 rifle. Looks similar to those right there. We do give you some examples of things to kind of look for if you've never seen those before. Powered actuated tool safety tips. Once again, don't use an explosive or flammable type of atmosphere. Inspect the tools before each use. Cleanliness is the key with tools, folks. It doesn't matter what kind of tool you're operating. Make sure it's thoroughly clean. Make sure it's operating freely. The barrel is free from obstructions and also has this proper shield and guard and attachments in place. Don't load the tool unless you're using it immediately, and do not leave a loaded tool unattended. Keep hands clear of the barrel end and never point the tool at anyone. And make sure you store it unloaded in a locked box is what we want to see. So in other words, it shouldn't have any type of a power source inside that particular powered actuated tool that you may be using. And then we go right into another type of tool that you may find in the workplace, what they call jacks. One of the things you want to keep in mind with any jack, it doesn't matter what type it is, make sure that you're on a good base, is on a firm level surface. Make sure it's centered directly in between the object that you're wanting to lift. The jack head is placed against the level surface. You apply the lift force evenly, lubricate and inspect jacks regularly. And once again, it could be like this one right here. It may be some type of a screw type jack. It could be a hydraulic. It could be a pneumatic type jack. Or it could actually be a floor jack or even a little small bottle jack that you may find. The manufacturer's rated capacity must be marked on all jacks and must not exceed. They're going to tell you exactly how much this particular jack is capable of lifting. What is its maximum lifting capacity? All jacks must have a stop indicator that is not exceeded. Okay, in other words, there's a safety portion built into the jack itself. Here's another good example of using jacks out there as far as blocking is concerned. Put a block under the base of the jack when the foundation is not firm, and place a block between the jack cap and the load if the cap might slip. In other words, you want to make sure that you have some type of a solid surface if you're going to be setting up a jack on that surface. That way, as you're jacking up or raising up whatever it is, your jack does not sink directly into the ground. And this is preventable. So once again, find some type of hard surface that you can lay, or hard type of material you can lay directly on that soft surface. And then from that point forward, you can actually start jacking up whatever you're trying to do at that time. But once again, look at how much capability or capacity does that jack have in order to lift up any type of an object. It's going to tell you, it's going to be marked on the jack itself. Cordless power tools. This is one that's very popular nowadays. Cordless tools, once again, gets their power directly from batteries. They do demand the same respect that corded tools demand. One of the things that you do want to keep in mind of these corded tools, battery powered tools, is the simple fact is they have a lot of what they call torque. Okay, some of these are capable of actually breaking off nuts or bolts. They work great for loosening up nuts or bolts. But here's the thing you want to keep in mind though is it has a tremendous amount of torque. And torque basically is what? Some type of a turning mechanism as far as when you're actually using that tool. That's where cordless tools are capable of causing damage or injury if all safety precautions are not followed. Today's cordless tools are as powerful as corded tools are years ago. The other thing too is on these battery powered tools, and please don't forget this, make sure you always have a backup battery because here's the thing, those batteries, if you use them out there for several hours, a lot of times they may start to run down. And once again, you may have to have another battery replenish or replace that particular one. Safety practices for cordless tools include, once again, they can or they may create sparks. They are not to be used in explosive type of an atmosphere, and they're flammable liquids, dust, or even gases. Avoid accidental starting by removing batteries or locking the off switch when the tool is charging or not being used. Walking with the tool in hand or transporting the tool. When adjusting or cleaning the tool, once again, avoid these type of accidents, and the switch should be where? In the locked off position. Keep hands away from rotating and moving parts. Just because it's battery, folks, doesn't mean it will not cut you, and it will. Never wear gloves, loose clothes, or jewelry, and keep your hair tied back to avoid being caught in moving parts. One of the things you want to keep in mind with gloves, particularly if you're working in a very tight area, if for some reason you have either, let's say, a router bit come in contact for some reason with your hand that you have gloves on, or better than that, maybe something that you're working with, the gloves that you have on do not fit you correctly or they're too large for you. That would be an example where, once again, that tool could pull that glove directly in, and once again, it could potentially pull your fingers directly into the tool itself. So use a little common sense out there when you do any type of use of power tools. The battery safety, once again, battery packs can leak chemicals that can cause irritation and burns. Batteries may also vent gases that can explode near explosive environments. A good example of that would be a pilot light, for an example. You never use any cordless tool in the presence of an open flame. And the other thing too is the battery packs may explode. Charge battery packs only with the recommended chargers. Whatever charger that particular battery came with, that is the charger that you need to use to charge up that particular battery. Because it was designed to work together is what the charger and the battery is designed for from the manufacturer. Battery maintenance. Once again, store battery packs away from other metal objects like paper clips, coins, nails, screws, or even other small metal objects. These things can make a connection from one terminal to another, shorting the battery terminals together, and also cause burns or even a fire. Keep the battery pack away from extreme temperatures. A good example of that may be some type of maybe a boiler or something like that. It may have a high temperature to it. Maybe an open flame heater would be another good example of a heat source. When recycling these batteries, tape over the terminals to prevent the contact and other type of terminals. Once again, if these batteries do have to be disposed of, get you some tape, wrap around the contacts of the battery itself. That way when you put them into a box, they do not come in contact with another battery that may be in there. And the positive and negative come together. And once again, it's going to do what? Create a spark, and it's going to cause a fire to occur in that particular location. Then we look at our personal protective equipment. That's the other most important part with any type of tool that you may be using. Look at your eye protection. Remember, your eyes is a very good example. It could be as simple as maybe a pair of safety glasses, a pair of chemical goggles, a pair of workshop or woodshop goggles, or even a face shield. The face shield is actually classified as being a secondary means of eye protection. And of course, you got your hearing. Take care of your hearing. There's all different types of hearing devices as far as protection is concerned out there on the market. You have the little foam roll-ups, just like you see in the picture here. You also got the ear muffs. That's another example. And of course, once again, we're talking about footwear. Don't forget about your closed footwear. What we want to see if you're going to be working with any type of power tools is some type of closed footwear. That's very important to remember that. And the other most important thing is if you're working around a very dusty environment where there's vapors, mist, gas, dust, anything like that, think about your lungs, respiratory protection. It's very important as far as your personal protective equipment needs are concerned. So the objectives we've covered today include the hazards of hand power tools, basic tools, safety rules for use of tools, electric tools. We've talked about striking tools, guarding. We talked about pneumatic tools, grinders, and we've also discussed power tools. Let's give you a little takeaway. Hazards are usually the result of improper tool use or not following one of the following of these protection techniques. Inspect the tool before use. Inspection is very critical. If you have a tool that's defective, you take it out of service. Use your personal protective equipment. Remember your eyes, your hands, your face, your feet, your respiratory tract. Make sure you keep guards in position where they belong. Make sure you're storing the tool properly. Use safe handling techniques. In other words, we don't want to see you carrying the cords and let the tool just kind of dangle. Once again, you need to be carrying the tool, but do not carry it by the cord itself. We also talk about cordless power tools. Remember this. They're very powerful. You don't want to use them in an explosive type of environment. And the other thing, too, is with cordless tools is they make so many variety of different makes and models and types of these battery power tools nowadays. Let's talk a little about facts and questions once again. Why is hand safety important? Hand safety is very important. If you go back and look at any type of tool that you're going to be using, your hands are always going to be doing what? Holding the tool for whatever use that you're using to use that particular product on at that time. What are the most common type of hand injuries? Well, there's a few you can throw in there. One of them may be lacerations. The other one may be what they call an avulsion. The other ones you may run across may be as simple as maybe a burn. For example, maybe if you're using like a drill bit, for an example, you're cutting into a piece of metal or even a piece of wood. You reach down and say, hey, I've got to change out this bit. You put your hands on it, and man, it just burns your fingers. That'd be another example of why of different types of hand injuries you may experience. When should I wear gloves, and what type of gloves should I wear? Well, it comes down to this. What are you doing? In other words, if you're working with certain type of tools, you may get by with a pair of leather gloves, preferably. Or if you're working with tools that you may be using around maybe chemicals, you may want to wear some type of maybe a nitrile glove. Here's the thing about the gloves, though, is make sure the gloves fit your hands correctly. That's the key thing to remember there. And what are the main hazards with using hand tools? There's all kinds of hazards. There's slips. That's probably one of the big ones. There's cuts. There's bruises. There's slippage. That's another one you can put over use of hand tools. There's also kickback. That's the other one you've got to be careful with any type of tool you may be using. So how should I inspect my hand tools before use? Do a visual examination. You can physically look over the tool. You're going to be looking at the cording. You're going to be looking at the area where the accessory is going to be connected to that area. Look at the housing of the tool itself. And once again, if you find any defects, flaws, or anything like that, it needs to be what? Taken out of service, tagged out, do not use. And once again, make sure it is reported to the supervisor so they can make arrangements to have the tool either repaired, or it may just be better off just to replace that particular tool. What is the proper way to store hand tools? We're very simply, when you're storing hand tools, you will make sure that number one is they're not plugged into anything. Number two is if they happen to be a battery-powered tool, remove the battery. And the other thing too, as far as storage of the tools, is make sure that you do not hang the tool by its cord. Always just lay the tool down. You can wrap the cord up a little bit and then place it directly beside the power tool itself. Who provides hand protection to employees? Well, that comes down to your supervisors in the department you work in. And like I mentioned earlier, it depends on what kind of job task you're going to be doing. If you're going to be working out there, let's say, for an example, working with glass, sheet metal, even some of your plastics, you need to wear some type of a cut-resistant type glove. Now, if you're working around wood, for an example, maybe plywood, 2x4, something of that nature, a good pair of leather sturdy gloves will work very well. Something that has some type of padding in it. And then, of course, the other thing, too, is if you happen to be using any type of tool that involves a chemical. You're going to read the safety data sheet. And another most important thing to keep in mind is on these, if you work around chemicals, make sure you're wearing a good nitrile glove or consult the safety data sheet, and it will tell you what kind of glove you need to wear for using that particular product. So hopefully that's been a pretty good little session for you, for those who are viewing in. This is the Oklahoma State Environmental Health and Safety Department. We do provide the following programs and services: fire protection and engineering, life safety and emergency preparedness. Our department also covers environmental compliance, laboratory safety, occupational health and medical surveillance, materials management, industrial hygiene, chemical hygiene, and of course safety training. My name is Greg Hogan. I do thank you all for allowing me to participate in this particular training session. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call at area code 405-744-7241, or you can email us at ehs@okstate.edu. And we're actually located in the University Health Services Center building in Suite 002. Or you can also just send an email to ehs.okstate.edu and send in information that you have questions over, and someone will respond to you within a short time. I do thank you all, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.